guys, welcome to the weekly question video. If you want to leave us a question, details on how to do that is down below, as well as ways to support the channel. You can now become a channel member here on YouTube and get early access to the main podcast, as well as a weekly bonus video. You can also become a member on Patreon. Our patrons get a couple bonus videos a week, as well as access to our Discord server, so it is a much better deal to go over to Patreon if you are considering it. This week's question is, what happens if my head of household decides to punish me and I completely disagree that I even deserve a spanking? This may happen from time to time, right? I think that it's a natural response as a taken in hand to feel somewhat justified in your behavior and your actions, especially when you didn't really intend to do anything wrong, or you had good intentions, so you shouldn't be punished because you didn't mean to misbehave. And of course, that doesn't necessarily get you out of consequences for what you actually did, but it's a somewhat natural response to be a little defensive, especially when being faced with the consequences of your actions, of your behavior. 9 times out of 10, though, when Coda comes to me and tells me I'm going to be punished, I know exactly what I did. I know exactly where I went wrong, and I completely agree that I deserve the punishment that is coming my way. But on the rare occasion that I don't agree, what do we do then? If he comes to me and says, you broke this rule, or you were disrespectful, or you did this that was inappropriate, you're going to be punished, and I disagree, we talk about it. Communication really is key to a successful domestic discipline relationship. And this is no different. I think that talking through the situation, talking through why a punishment is happening, is a really important step. For the head of households out there, your taken in hand cannot accept a punishment that they don't feel like they deserve. You have to make sure that they understand, agree with, and submit to the punishment process before you start. That's going to make the punishment go much more smoothly. That's going to make it much more effective, and that's going to just make it easier for you administering the punishment as well as them receiving the punishment. So you have to talk through these things. You have to make sure that they understand and accept that the punishment is necessary and deserved. As a taken in hand, you need to communicate to your head of household when you are feeling defensive, when you are feeling like you don't deserve to be spanked right now. Why, to a certain extent, you might even have the attitude of like, how dare they decide to punish me for this? I don't deserve this. You need to be able to communicate that respectfully. Establish a way that you can go to them and say, I need to have some clarification here. That's kind of the language that I would use, is I would ask Coda, I need you to clarify what I'm being punished for. That way it gives him the opportunity to clear up any confusion that I have, because there has been an instance that I can think of where I was punished for being disrespectful in how I communicated something, but he needed to communicate to me that I was not being punished for communicating a need. I was not being punished for expressing myself or having the emotions that I had or having the needs that I had, but I was being punished for how I expressed them, how I spoke to him, how I communicated in that moment, because my communication was disrespectful and how I expressed myself was inappropriate. And so it's really, really important to your taken in hand to understand exactly why they are being punished, and so that they can receive that punishment and receive that lesson. Now, if I disagree with being punished, that does not get me out of the punishment. When we talked about the rules of our household, when we talked about the consequences that Coda could impose upon me, that gave him the ability to uphold those rules with any of the consequences that we discussed and negotiated at his discretion. So I don't get to decide that I don't deserve to be punished. It is his responsibility to communicate to me why I'm being punished. And it is his responsibility to help me come into understanding of how my behavior was inappropriate. But just because I disagree does not negate the consequences that I'm facing. I still have to face the consequences of my behavior, even if I feel justified even in it, even if I feel like I don't deserve to be punished. Coda still has the ability to punish me as the authority in our home and as the authority in our relationship. He can still impose punishment on me even if I disagree. But he does have a responsibility to point to me where I went wrong and why what I did was wrong and how it goes against what I agreed to in our relationship. I agreed to follow these rules. I agreed to honor his authority, to honor his headship in our home. I agreed to do these things. So if I went against that and he can point me to that, then that is what's important. It's important as a head of household that you can point your taken in hand back to where she went wrong and remind her that she agreed to these rules, to these values, to these structures that you have set in place, that she did agree to this. And because she agreed to that, you are within your right to hold her accountable. Now, tools that Coda will use to help me come into the right mindset and the right posture to receive punishment, especially when I don't feel like I deserve it, is not only do we communicate, not only does he point me back to how I broke the rules, what I agreed to, and how what I did goes against what I agreed to do, and how he does have the right to uphold the consequences that we agreed to do. Not only does he do all of those things, but he also has me write out an apology. I've talked about this before in past podcasts, but that written apology really is key to shifting my mindset, because even if I go into that apology still not feeling 100% like I deserve this punishment, after I write out what I did and how it went against the established rules of our relationship, it really does make me face that I made the wrong decision. So once I really write out that apology and think through and really see the failure of my logic of thinking that I was justified in those actions, then I can really accept the punishment. That written apology really is key for me. It really does help me. I think that corner time can also be a really good tool for this, but just having that time to really reflect, to be able to understand and accept the punishment is key. So to answer the question, what happens when I don't think I deserve my spanking? I get my spanking anyway, but only after we've talked about it. My head of household has communicated why what I did was wrong, how it went against our rules, and I can come alongside and really understand and agree that my behavior was inappropriate and yield myself to that process. Hopefully that answers the question, and I'd love to know, how do you guys approach these disagreements in your relationship? Leave that in the comments, as well as any questions that you have for these videos. And again, if you want to support the channel, links to how to do that is down below. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.